Hi everybody. Today we're going to be doing some colouring for Mer-May, and I don't usually colour anything along the Mer-May lines because mermaids aren't something I'm usually drawn to be colouring, but I did find this Jasmine Becket-Griffith mermaid here with the lightning and storms going on in the background, so I thought this one would fit in quite well with my theme of storms for this month and also with the theme of mermaids for Mer-May, so we have a kind of a double whammy going on there. And as I said, this one is by Jasmine Becket-Griffith and she is from the Mermaids colouring book. So I thought what I could do, at least for the background, the mermaid herself, I'm going to be using the markers and pencils most likely. But what I'm going to be doing for the background is using my Supertips as watercolour to see if I can get some sort of stormy sky and stormy sea going on there. I have looked up the original art for this image and it's really nice. It's kind of a monochrome palette going on with the blues and greys, and the mermaid herself is kind of a creamy colour, yellowish skin. So I thought maybe we could do something similar along those lines and play around with the Supertips and see what we could get happening, bring in the markers and pencils for the mermaid maybe, and just go from there. So without any further ado, I'll zoom us in and we'll get started. Okay, I've zoomed us in there and I've got my little reference picture pulled up to be looking at while I'm colouring. And before I start, I thought maybe I could just colour the mermaid skin, and I'm going to put that in with a kind of a yellowish tone marker because in the original art the mermaid does have a kind of a yellowish creamy coloured skin, and I thought this one might fit quite well. This is Y010 Primrose from the Ohuhu marker set. So I'm going to just quickly colour a skin with this kind of yellowish cream colour, which hopefully will be showing up on the camera. I am actually laying down some colour here because this yellow in the original art seems to contrast really nicely with the greys and the blues she has going on in the background. So I'm hoping to get something of a similar effect. I'll just catch up with you once I've gone ahead and filled in all this skin just with a plain layer of marker, and then we'll play around with our Supertips for the background and see what we can get going on. There's our mermaid quickly filled in, and she does look pretty yellow at the moment. If the colour is showing up, that's looking pretty yellow. But looking at the original art, the shading is coming in blues and greys, and it's looking a lot more like a skin tone, kind of a luminous looking skin tone. So hopefully we can make that work. So now comes the fun part. I've been looking forward to working on this picture with the Supertips here. So shall we start with the kind of thundery sky we have going on? Let's try and get that on camera. And the thundery sky maybe starts with a black or a very dark grey along this top here. It blends down into more of a blue around this kind of area, and then into a grey, a darker grey, and then a very light grey along the horizon line. So I'll see if I can look out a few Supertips I can find to get that same kind of gradient going on, a kind of storm cloud looking there. So here we are after having tested out a few of the Supertips here. You can see on my spare paper all the little scribbles going on there. And this is what you need to do when you are colouring with the Supertips, whether as watercolour or as they are. Because as they don't have names or numbers on them, you can't really swatch them very well. You need to scribble on a little piece of spare paper to see what colour pen actually is, because sometimes the colours don't match the lids exactly, the usual kind of problems. So it's always best to test it on a separate piece of paper. And these colours will get a little bit lighter, maybe change a little bit once you do add the water, but at least this gives you a kind of a vague idea of the colours you will be actually laying down. And I did run into maybe a little bit of a problem in that the greys I could find in my set of Supertips here are kind of a warm grey, like this one here. And looking at the reference images, we mainly have the cooler tone grey, so that could have been a little bit of a problem. But what I have decided to do, I will show you the colours that I did end up picking. That's these ones here. I'm going to start with the black towards the top of the picture. I'm going to move on to the darker blue, this darker blue here, then on to kind of a greyish, sort of a mid-tone blue, and finally into the cool grey towards the horizon line, and hopefully those colours will blend out and get some nice effects going on there once I've actually added in the water. So let's see what we can make happen. This is going to be fun. I do love using Supertips in these blue angel books. So looking at the original image, let us see what's going on here. We do have, I'll try and get the whole kind of page on the screen so we can see what's going on. We do have a kind of a black edge to the top of the picture. I know this black does give kind of reddish tones maybe when you add the water to it, so maybe we'll have something interesting happen. Maybe this won't actually work at all, but I'm looking forward to see what we can get actually happening with this. And if anybody does want to colour along and find their own super tips that kind of match these colours, unfortunately I can't tell you any names and numbers, but if anybody wants to colour along, then yeah, feel free to do that. I'm hoping it will be a fairly quick colouring with bringing in these super tips and just leaving the markers and pencils for our actual mermaid there. As looking at the original art, she looks as if we'd be able to match that more closely if I did stick to my more kind of tried and trusted markers and pencils, especially with the Prismacolors, I think. So we've scribbled a little bit there with the black. We do have that coming down a lot more on this side. We want the lightning to be the bright white, so I'm going to try and avoid going over that when I do come in with the water. So we're going to move down into this blue. I want to try and have maybe a bit of a whitish outline around those clouds. We can come in and shade over this with the pencils afterwards. And this, of course, yeah, it's not neat colouring. I am scribbling quite a lot here, but it shouldn't matter. Once we actually bring in the water, we'll be able to blend these out and get something nice happening here. And the mermaid does have black hair, so yeah, any little slips over onto the mermaid's hair, there shouldn't be too much of a problem. And yeah, this will be kind of nerve-wracking maybe, just scribbling away onto colouring books like this. But the end result, we will see the end result. The proof of the pudding, as they say, is in eating. So we will see what does actually happen here once we get the water onto this. Get the colours blending maybe. Neaten off these edges. The scribbling won't be so obvious. We do have a few little bits of the dark blue coming in here maybe. But around the lightning, we do want that to be fairly light because that is what is lighting up this scene. So we're moving on to the kind of a mid-tone blue now. Kind of a dusty greyish blue. Hopefully you can see on camera the actual colour. So if you do want to colour along, you might be able to pick that out of your own pens or something similar. Of course, you can use completely different colours. And already I'm smudging over the edge here, yeah. I kind of expected that. I am not the neatest, as I say. We want to have kind of a sort of halo effect around these lightning strikes, but we do want to have colour around it. So what I'm planning to do is blend out the blue, kind of more towards the lightning, so that we do have that kind of halo effect around the lightning strike to make it look as if it is glowing. We can bring in the white gel pen, of course. That's kind of a given, as I say. One of my staples for the colouring, white gel pen. Okay, that's not looking too bad. We're going to bring in the grey down this side, or this greyish blue down this side anyway. Again, leaving that kind of halo effect around the lightning, trying to come down to about the same kind of level as we do have on the other side. And I want to have a kind of a white, maybe a little bit of glow coming in around the horizon. So I'm going to bring in this lighter greyish blue, or I suppose this one is more of a cool grey than anything. And bring that in, but not all the way down to the horizon, because we want to try and blend that out into the horizon a little bit. I love the mermaid's hair kind of flowing in the wind there. I think that's a really nice touch of the stormy weather. And the same on the other side again. Hopefully I'm keeping on camera. I don't have a great track record for keeping on camera, but I'm trying my best. Down to about the same kind of level. This book is bending a little bit into the spine, which kind of makes things a little bit difficult, but we're going to persevere. we're going to carry on, see what we can make happen with this sky. That's not looking too bad, even without the water, I don't think. So hopefully I don't spoil it here. Maybe I'll try and blend out this smudge I had going on here. If all else fails, I can cover the edge of the page with washi tape. That is always an option. And drawing a thick line around this frame will eliminate any of these lines here. I usually use a metallic kind of Sharpie for that or something along those lines. So let's get on camera, put the water on here and see how we go. As I said, kind of nerve-wracking this part. And with the book bending down into the middle of the water, we'll maybe bend down there as well and drip away, but we'll try. Blend that out a little bit towards the edges of the clouds. We don't want too much of a highlight there. We want the lightning to be the most highlighted. You can come in with kitchen roll and dab off a little bit of colour if you're thinking that might help. And oh, yes, I like that. Oh, I do get a bit too enthusiastic when I'm colouring with these super tips, but I do love it in this paper. This paper is just perfect for using with the super tips. And you get these nice kind of watercolour sort of washy effects without bringing in your actual watercolours and setting up a palette and all that kind of stuff. Oh yeah, I'm loving that cloud. I love using the super tips on this paper. For this one, it won't be for the whole picture. We will be bringing in markers and pencils for the mermaid more than likely. But plans can change. Yeah, this is me. I change ideas as I go along. We all know that. We're just going to see how well this sky works and the sea and maybe work from there. But I am loving it so far, and yeah, kind of glad I did decide to go through with the idea of the super tips. But yeah, we want this kind of coming down into nearly white, very slight off-white shade at the bottom by the horizon there. Yeah. Yep, that's working. That's working. Sometimes you do get colours in the super tips that don't quite blend as well as the others, which can sometimes be a problem, especially if you're doing something like this and you do actually want the colours to blend out and merge into each other, give you the nice watercolory effect, as we can see happening here. You can dab off with the tissue, as I've done, if you find something is looking a bit too chaotic or gone a little bit awry. And you can come in and shade with pencils, obviously, if you're not happy with what you've actually laid down with the super tips. But I have to say I'm pretty happy with this so far. It does tend to go over the edges, especially if you're kind of like me and not the neatest when it comes to laying down the colours. But I'm going to try and give these kind of cloudy effects that I can see happening in the original artwork, because I do like how it's working there to give the highlight, showing that the lightning is maybe shining onto the clouds a little bit. And I'll do that by bringing in the little kitchen towel and dabbing away on the edge of the cloud there. Yeah, that's working. And I'm going to try and maintain a little bit of a halo around this lightning. It is a little bit difficult. This brush, as usual, is not the best, but it's just for fun anyways, as usual with my colourings. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, you've learnt what not to do. It's kind of how I work things. And these kind of little branches of the lightning, those are paler than the actual main strike of the lightning, so we'll go over those with some gel pen or something a little bit later. Something I have learned quite recently, actually, which has made for some quite nice effects. You can lay down white gel pen and then go over it with alcohol marker, because I don't have any Posca or anything like that that is opaque to go over any kind of highlights or anything like that where I'm wanting a different colour than white. But what I have found that you can do is lay down white and then go over it with alcohol marker. If you're very, very gentle, or I have been very, very gentle laying down the colour, trying not to rub off the white gel pen, that does seem to work quite well for me. So we'll maybe try that a little bit later on with these branches of the lightning here. But what we do want to have happening is these lightning strikes, that is the light source in the picture. We want that to be basically the brightest thing. So anything else that comes into the picture, even in our highlights, we don't want to be going pure white for large areas anyway. I possibly will bring in the white gel pen, as I usually do, especially bits that are close to the lightning strike, to show that those are highlighted by the lightning. We do want little touches of colour along this horizon here. There we go, that's not looking too bad. I do like the way those colours are kind of making that sort of stormy sky, all the clouds kind of boiling together, and yeah, I'm quite liking that. I'm sure we can find something to go around this frame and neaten that off, but yes, I am loving how that is looking at the moment. And there is a little bit of blue coming into these lightning strikes that I'm hoping to be able to bring in with some pencil later on. So these waves here, they do seem to bring in a little bit of that warm grey, so maybe I'll grab one of these warmer greys. Looking at the image here, we do seem to have a black coming in for these foreground waves, I think to emphasize that they are further towards us, so there will be bigger contrast on these waves here. And going towards the back here, these waves in the background, those are more light greys, and they just seem to be a very light blue coming in. So I've picked out some more colours here. I just bring in my little scribbling piece of paper without going over our wet work there. I found this grey here. As I said, they are slightly on the warmer side, slightly more warmer than I would normally like to bring in. I have this one, which is a cooler grey, and then we have this very bright blue, which seems to come in towards the back of the picture because there's blue added into these lightnings, as I said. So I'll just show you those 3 pens. One of these is from a different set, I think. This one seems to be from a different set of pens. But these are the 3 colours, if you can see those tops there. And try and match them with your own colours maybe if you'd like to colour along. So let's see what we can make happen with these and try and follow on from the original there. We do have more of the grey coming in on this background. After this dark line here, we have more of the grey coming in, and then further towards the front it turns into more of the colours that we've used on the sky. So I'll bring those back in once we get further towards the front. But let's see what we can have going on here. As I said, along the lines of these waves, we do have this really bright blue, which hopefully will pale down once we put water on. That's what I'm trying to say. But we do have hints of that in this sea in the background, maybe showing that the lightning is kind of glowing onto the sea, which will all make sense as we get further along, I hope. And then starting to come down here, we're moving more into the kind of greys. And if I do bring in the white gel pen over the top of that blue, hopefully that should actually soak through and give us more of the colour that we're aiming for there. So this darker grey, a little bit of shading. We are going to bring in the water again to blend these colours and give us some stormy sea with a bit of look. I am loving how that sky has come out. But yeah, this paper, absolutely amazing with using Supertips as watercolour. You can, if you do want more control over the Supertips, using them as watercolour. You can use them to scribble onto a palette of some sort, either a plastic palette or a clean plate, like a glazed china plate or something along those lines. I've seen people use tiles, glazed tiles as a palette. Anything that's non-porous, basically, you can scribble on with your Supertips and use that as a palette. This colour here is bringing in the blue, so we'll have a little suggestion of our grey. And once you've scribbled onto your palette with your pens, you can go onto them with a damp brush and basically pick up the colour from the plate or the palette and paint with them as you would with normal watercolour, and have a bit more control over where the colours go down, and you can be a lot more precise. You don't get any of these effects if you don't really want them happening, if you're not a fan of them. I know not a lot of people are. I really love the kind of those effects. I have been given the names of them, what they're actually called. I can never remember. I just know that I love them. I do love using the wet media. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to, as we go further up towards the top there, blend out this colour as we did towards the horizon. And then we can go from this grey sea into a more bluish one here. Let's try bringing in our greyish blue a little bit here. We do have a little bit of the lighter blue along that wave as well. So we'll pop a little bit of that in. And it looks a total mess at this point in time. Yeah, this is looking pretty messy, but once we do actually get the water going on there, we'll have something that we can work with, I think. Even if we do come in and put a pencil over the top. Let's hope these greys blend out as well as I'm hoping they do. And of course, with using a completely different medium like Crayola pens here, we're not going to get anything that is completely the same as the original art. This one is called Sea Storm. If anybody wants to look up the original art and see what I'm actually working to here. Yeah, we're not going to get anything that is completely the same. We're being inspired rather than copying it completely, I think. But the medium is totally different, so we're never going to get the same effect as an acrylic painting, which is what Jasmine does do a lot. I'm not sure if this one is acrylic, but acrylic is what Jasmine tends to use a lot. So let's try and blend this greyish blue into what we have happening here. Let the pens do their thing a little bit. We can come on with highlights and shade with pencil. We just want a nice kind of stormy sea looking base going on in the background there. I think we've got something we can definitely work with. This is maybe a little bit darker in the image than what we have down there, but as I said, yeah, pencils. We can always come in with the pencils, add any highlights and do any shading that we think we want up there. So again, onto the other side now. We have this bright blue as a kind of highlights along these edges of the waves. Seems to be it down to there, I'm thinking. We'll come down to those closer waves in a little bit. I'm thinking the sky is working a little bit better than the sea at the moment, but yeah, we can come in with pencils, which will probably be the saving grace for our sea. Gone a little bit darker over this side because we're behind the mermaid. Yeah, and I wasn't looking at the reference image. Let's just be honest, I wasn't looking at the reference image. I just started filling in that dark grey, but we're not copying, right? We're not copying. We're getting something similar if we can. And as we've done that side, we can bring in this kind of greyish blue. It's definitely quite hard to shade when we're going down into the spine of the book there. And if you are colouring down into the spine of the book, and don't be too generous with the water, because that will drip down from your page down into the spine of the book, and you'll definitely have some tidying up to do then if that does happen. So I'm trying to flatten out the page and be a little bit careful with the water. You want to add enough that you do get the colours kind of blending and running together, but you don't want as much that it's going to drip down into the spine of the book. Maybe dab off some a little bit on this horizon here. That is supposed to be a lot lighter. As I said, I wasn't looking at the reference image, so I've maybe gone a little bit overboard with my shadows there, but yeah, that's a little bit better. And over here we maybe don't have as much shadows as we're actually needing, so we can come in and add some extra. And that paper is still a little bit damp there. Maybe I should have waited until it went a little bit drier. So as I said, these waves at the bottom of our picture, let's move a little bit further down here. These waves towards the bottom of the picture, we are going back to the same colours as we had towards the top with the sky. So we'll be going back from the black to the kind of a dusty blue. Trying to leave these tops of the waves to be lighter colour. We do have this very bright blue coming in as well, but we want that to be dulled down, maybe with a little bit of grey shading. Maybe we could try blending that light blue with one of the lighter greys. Going here into the darker blue again, like we did on the sky. We do have the mermaid's tail coming up there. We're going to have a few little ripples around there, around her tail. Trying to suggest a kind of wave shape there with the way I'm doing the pen strokes. I'm not entirely sure whether that will work or not, but we are playing here and finding out what does work and what doesn't. Okay, we'll get the same thing going down on these waves at the front and then come in with our water. The colours are smudging there a little bit, but it's all good because we are going to be mixing them even more once we bring in the water. Okay, that's not bad. Let's see if we can get that going so it can be drying when we move on to the other side of the water. Okay, that's working quite well. I'm still not super happy with this piece of sea here. The other side has worked quite nicely. Yeah, that's working quite well. I'm thinking I will need to come in with the white gel pen there and shade on top of it with alcohol marker. That would be my first kind of gut reaction to get that working the way I want it to be. But if you are colouring along and using your own pens, then you'll be getting completely different results than me anyway, due to the way you colour, the way you put the water on, and each time you do this it's completely unpredictable, which is why I do like laying down the pens on the paper before I add the water. It's that kind of randomness that really kind of interests me and keeps me wanting to do it. I do love the effects you end up getting when you let the paint or the ink, in this case, just do its own thing. I've added quite a lot of water to these bits of the sea here over on this side of the page because there is no threat of that kind of seeping off down into the binding of the book. We are far enough away there, and the paper is buckling very slightly here, but I don't mind that at all. Oh, I like I like that effect there. That's lovely. Let's try just dropping on some of the clear water. See what we can make happen in the sea. Maybe that's something we can have happen here. That might boost what's happening there a little bit. We add a few drops of the clean water. Let's just see what we can make of that. Of course, if you do that, it will take a little bit longer to dry, but oh yes, bloom. I think that's called a bloom, isn't it? Yeah, or cauliflower. I love it when that happens. It looks awesome. A very stormy sea, which is what we are aiming for here, just a stormy sea. So yeah, quite happy with that. This bit not so much, but you do take your chances when you are using the pens in this way. You're not entirely sure what you will end up with. You just got to hope sometimes that it's something good. So we're going to do the same here on these waves with the black, mainly in this bottom area here, looking at the original art. Coming most of the way across the picture actually. There we go, we have a tiny little bit here. Maybe some darker there into the sea, but I'm thinking, yeah, I may have to use more pencil on this than I originally intended. I do have this navy blue kind of colour. Again, I'm going for similar here, but not completely the same. And this blue wasn't blending in super well from what I can tell the other side. It seemed to work okay on the sky, but then we didn't have very much of it on the sky, to be honest. And this bit will come in with a little bit of a navy blue that I forgot to put in this little wave here. And coming into a little bit of that bright blue. And if you are colouring along, then yeah, you don't have to copy the where I put my pen strokes or anything like that entirely exactly at all. Any kind of playing around with the pens will give you a nice sea effect here probably once you bring in the water. Play around with blending the colours, maybe dabbing it off, adding on some clear water to get some nice sea effects going on. It's all about playing around and not being too worried about messing up. My mum always used to say, it's just a book. You shouldn't be scared of it. It's paper. She's kind of got a point, really. And as I say, if you do mess up on it, it's a learning experience in any case. And as usual, I did forget to scan this one in and take copies in case I do want to colour this one again. But yeah, we're just hoping this does work. I'm quite happy with most of it so far. The sky, more than anything. I do love how that sky has turned out. Yeah, I quite like this wave as well. This wave is working really well. I think once we come in with a little bit of pencil in the background of that this sea here, there that I'm not particularly happy with, that sea. But once we come in with some pencil there, I think we'll be able to sort that right out. And by now I'm planning on having some washi tape or at least a thick outline around the edge of this picture here, because we do have the outside of the lines kind of colouring going on there. And this this kind of colour palette is working really well. What I'm going to do now, I think, while this sky is dry, is go ahead and try and do these lightning strikes. Let's just get my white pen working and just go over this line art with the white pen. I can maybe show you that we can bring in the alcohol marker over the white pen to give a kind of opaque colour that you can't usually get with alcohol markers. It might work with other things as well, going over the top of the white pen. I'm not entirely sure. But for me, it's worked out to be kind of a substitute for different coloured Posca pens or acrylic pens that I don't actually have. My acrylic pens are not the most opaque. One set is not very opaque at all. One set is pretty good, the other not very opaque at all. This will be looking a little better once we go into the darker areas of the sky here. In the original art, it is standing out quite a lot more. I'm not entirely sure why. I've kept my colours pretty similar. Maybe we can see if we can fix that, but playing it by ear and seeing what we can make happen here. Maybe bringing in some really bright blue will help. I do want to keep the kind of painterly effect we've got going on in the sky. I do love how this sky has turned out, so I don't really want to play around with that too much and mess up what I think is actually working really well there. And these kind of side branches of the lightning in the picture that I'm looking at, they kind of blend out a little bit more into the sky. So that's where I'll be putting the marker over the top. Maybe I should just leave it and see how much this blue soaks through into the actual white gel pen, because blue does have a tendency to soak through white gel pen quite a lot. I don't really have a tried and trusted formula for colouring lightning. I've tried it a couple of times. Sometimes it's successful, sometimes it's not. One time it was such a fail that I had to actually cut out the page and replace it with some collage of some lightning. If you want to learn, you have to keep trying, right? So we're trying the lightning, giving that whole kind of lightning strike a base of the white. And as I said, this down here is showing up a lot better in the actual picture. I'm not entirely sure why. Maybe her colour is a bit more saturated down the bottom there, even though it's a light colour. And we do have a bit of a highlight on the edge of this horizon here as well. Okay, as an experiment, and this one is a slightly different colour than the actual lighting we've got going on the sea, but we might be able to bring this in for a few little highlights as well on the sea. This one is called G326 Bright Blue, and I want to add this to maybe a few of these outside branches of lightning, to have it kind of feathering out into the sky, which is what it does in the actual art that I'm looking at. Not entirely sure I like it down here, so I'm going to knock that back a bit by bringing in the white gel pen a little bit more. I'm still going to leave a suggestion of it. After a little bit of playing with the white gel pen there and blending that out a little bit, I think we've got something workable there. This bright blue, I think, will work a lot better on parts of lightning that's up towards the sky there, where we are actually going darker. So yeah, that's working quite well. Let's go ahead and do the other side with the lightning here. Okay, I learned my lesson on the other side of the page, and I've put less of the alcohol marker down towards the bottom of these lightning strikes, where I didn't think it really worked all that well. And I think we've got something there that does look like we've got some lightning going on. So now the sea may be getting a little bit dry here. We might be able to do the same kind of thing towards the tops of these waves. We do want the sea to look as if the lightning is shining onto it, so we want a nice lot of white highlights in this kind of area mainly. And we have got that blue that we brought in with the super tip, so there's not as much need to go in there with the alcohol marker. I think we've got a bit of a glowy effect happening there with the sea, which is working quite well. And hopefully the super tip ink will soak through into the white pen a little bit and give us kind of softer highlights there. Maybe won't go into this bit here so much. I did not dab on the extra water there, so that might not be quite as dry. But yeah, I think this is one of the few times that I do actually want the colour underneath to come through into the white pen. I'm hoping that will. I'm not sure if we could actually go over the white pen with the super tip, with it being water-based. But maybe we could, yeah, it seems to be working kind of okay. I'm being very, very tentative about putting the pen down there, but putting the super tip on top of the white gel pen, that seems to be working as well, just to dull down that white a little bit. We do want the white, the lightning to be the lightest thing in the picture pretty much, so hopefully, yeah, the colour will start to soak through into these white highlights here. Even if not, I don't think that's working too badly now. I think that's looking quite like a stormy sea, so yeah. So let's go ahead and put the same sort of highlights onto this side of the sea here behind our mermaid. And just going over the line art that's there. And then I will come in with the super tip and go over the top of the white gel pen, especially in the bits that are closest to the mermaid, as we did the other side. That seemed to work quite well. We are living and learning here. I hadn't tried putting a super tip over the top of the white gel pen, but it is something that does seem to work with the alcohol markers, so I figured, yeah, maybe it might. All the white's done there, so I'll go in a little bit with this light kind of greyish blue or cool grey of some description. Okay, yeah, I'm quite happy with that stormy background there. It's not exactly the same as the original art, but as I said, we're being inspired rather than copying it. Lovely. We just leave the highlights there around the area where the lightning is coming down. That seems to be working really well. Start coming in a little bit closer now with our white gel pen. This piece of the wave here should be, yeah, it's at least touch dry, so we should be able to go ahead with the white gel pen here, go over all the line art and then see what other highlights we are needing. Maybe we might not need any, we'll see. I did want to leave the actual pencil shading to our actual mermaid herself, so I'm hoping we can make this kind of sea background, sea and sky work with just the markers. Maybe this isn't working quite as good as we'd hoped, so maybe I'll have to come in with some pencil a little bit later, but for now I'll leave as is, and hopefully it still reads as waves in the background there, even if it's not quite how I intended that to be. Maybe we could, now it's dry, thinking about it, maybe we could just come in and touch it up a little bit. That wave here isn't looking entirely like the one in the original art, but we're being inspired anyway. We're not exactly copying, so I'm going to go ahead and go over the rest of this line art with the white gel pen. It's not going to be the focal point of the picture, so we're not going to mess around too much and waste too much time. Just trying to get one wave looking right in this whole picture. The mermaid and the lightning are meant to be the focal points, so that is hopefully what people will be looking at straight away. They're not looking directly at the waves, first of all. And there is always the shading with pencils. And if I do feel that that's still not entirely how I would like it, so I'm not going to waste too much time messing about. Maybe we can leave these highlights here with just a paper colour coming through, because the actual paper in these Blue Angel books, in camera, the actual paper in these Blue Angel books is not white, it's kind of an off-white colour. So if we leave the paper as is, we're not going to be competing with the lightning, which is actually white. The blue highlights that we've given it. And to be honest, I think it's working pretty well, as it is at the moment, giving the sea effect here. There's a few nice effects coming through, especially here. The watercolour effects, I am loving that. Once we get the mermaid up and running, she will be the focus. So this one will probably turn out to be more of a mixed media kind of colouring, which is all good. You don't have to stick to just pens, just pencils. You don't have to stick to just anything. You can use whatever you want in any of your colourings, whatever you think will work. This paper in these Blue Angel books does take a lot of different media. It does take markers pretty well. It takes watercolour. It takes super tips. So yeah, any kind of thing you'd like to use. I haven't tried acrylic markers actually. I haven't tried the acrylic markers on Blue Angel paper, but I'd imagine those seem to work on pretty much any kind of paper. So yeah, that would be a little bit of an experiment. Although I haven't really tried colouring skin with acrylic markers, so yeah, that would be a bit of an experiment. And this white gel pen is already soaking up the colour from the markers that are underneath, which is what I'm actually wanting here, to tone that down and make sure it's not the bright white of the lightning, so that our lightning does stand out. That's looking a lot like Stormy Sea, I think. I'm pretty happy, not entirely with this wave here, as I have mentioned, but I think I can live with it, and if not, come in with the pencils. We'll see what we actually look like once we've done the rest of our picture. So I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of the highlights on this side of the page, just go over all the line art with the white gel pen. There we go. I think our sea is pretty much finished there. I'm kind of coming around to maybe that wave just being one of the background waves and not too important to the rest of the picture. If I just add in this little bit of white that we've missed there, I think maybe we can live with it. So for our mermaid's hair here, our mermaid in the actual original line art does have black hair, and it seems to have a kind of a blue undertone, so that is how I usually colour black hair these days anyway. So I'm going over the whole thing and basing it with this marker, which is a Prussian blue, which is PB5, a Ohuhu marker, just laying down the base for her hair. We'll be coming in with Prismacolor pencils, I think, to give the tones and highlights there. And I think maybe that bit there should be skin, so I'll come in and fill that in with the primrose yellow in a little bit. But yeah, first of all, I'm going to base her whole hair with this Prussian blue. Okay, I've based all her hair now, and I found a couple of bits to touch up the skin tone. This part here that I thought might be skin isn't actually skin in the painting. So I've gone over that with the blue, but I've realised that this part of her tail here, that is also being shown as being this kind of skin tone yellow colour. So I'll add that in quickly. And these kind of pebbles or stones that's making up her bikini here and a little bit on her tail, those are kind of a light greyish blue, maybe kind of along the lines that we've used in our kind of sky here, this kind of greyish blue. So I've picked out B120, which is pale blue, and I'm just going to fill those in with this kind of pale sort of greyish blue here. And then once we've shaded that with the pencils, I think we'll be good. Jasmine's girls tend not to come with their pupils filled in, so I'll just fill in these pupils here quickly with a black Sharpie. And her eyes seem to be a pale kind of crystal blue colour. So I'm going to base those with BG4, which is mint blue. And the one kind of touch of a warm colour that is in the original artwork is her lipstick, which is a light pink. So I'm just going to fill this in with pink, this one is called. And that number is RV260. I am trying very hard here to build myself up to actually try and shade her skin with markers, because this bottom half of her skin especially is shaded with a light kind of cool grey, and I'm not sure I'm brave enough to try and do that with markers, maybe with a very light blue grey and see how I go from there. So this is BG3 blue grey, and I'm going to try and blend that into the primrose yellow. See how well I can make this work. I'm not sure how well this blue is actually working at the moment, but yeah, her skin does seem to be shaded with a blue-grey. I can go in and work over this with the pencils, but I want to see how well that works with laying the blue-grey over the top there, which cuts down my time for the actual pencil shading. I missed a strand of hair, there's always something. It seems to go in that kind of idea. Okay, after touching up a few little bits that I did miss, that's not looking half as bad as I thought it would actually. So if this blue-grey does hold out, we might be able to bring this in for some shading, and if I'm even brave enough, I could bring that in on her face. And this mermaid isn't shaded in Jasmine Becket-Griffith's kind of usual bandit mask kind of shading. We do have a sort of a nose going on here. So I'll try and pop in a few little bits of shading onto her face maybe. Blend it into the primrose. We have a larger shadow on this side of her nose here, so that tells us the light is coming mainly from this side, from that lightning strike there. So that will help us when it comes to shading. And for this shading, I'm mainly trying to copy what is actually on the original artwork. We do have most of her body shaded with this blue-grey. that is basically where the shading and the kind of highlights and stuff go on her skin there. I might actually bring in a little bit of my own down here because as our light is coming from the right hand side of the picture from that lightning strike, according to what I'm looking at, then her hair here would be casting shadows onto her face. So we'll just pop those in, and her ear would be in shadow. Okay, I'm fairly happy with that. I've spotted another couple of strands of hair that I haven't coloured in. Chop those up with the Prussian blue. And now it's time to bring in some pencils, I think. The pencils I'm going to be using are Prismacolors because I've actually saved up and bought myself a big set of Prismacolors, so I'm quite excited to be using those still at the moment. Okay, so I think I'm going to start with her hair because I do love to colour hair, and this looks quite fun with being windswept over to the side there. So from the Prismacolors, I've picked out a few colours that I think I might use. I might not use all of these, but these are the ones I think, looking at the original art, that I might be using. I've got the white, which is already wearing down. That is PC938. I have a 30% cool grey, which is PC1061. I have a cloud blue, a very nice light blue there, which is PC1023. I have periwinkle, that is PC1025. I have ultramarine, I think this one is, yeah, PC902 as a darker blue, and I have the black because our mermaid does have black hair. So I think I'm going to pick out first where our highlights would be, mainly on this side here. If I just pop those in, just to remind myself where they might be, I can come in and add to them with the white gel pen. Kind of in these sort of areas where her hair curves down to go into her parting there, that's going to be highlighted. We have a few areas here. As our light is coming from the right hand side here with the lightning strike, most of our highlights will be down this side, and kind of making it up a little bit now. The kind of places I would normally put highlights. Anything that comes up above the rest of the hair, that would be highlighted. We would be getting more light. And anything that is back underneath, a lot of other hair, that would be the darkest kind of areas. I do want to do kind of similar to what is actually in the original art because I do like the original art. I have been doing that quite a lot lately, is finding original art and trying to kind of replicate it a bit, which is not something I do quite often before now. I haven't really done that quite a lot as it hasn't really worked for me. I'm starting now with the black coming in for the darkest areas. There's a lot of black in this in her hair. Maybe it is like very dark blue, but in the picture I'm looking at, it does look to be as if it is the actual black. So we'll go with that. It is a fantasy picture. We're not aiming for realism. And black hair does need black actual shading sometimes. Trying to make the bits I picked out as highlights as being actual highlights. Maybe the ultramarine blue kind of blending into where we've picked the highlights out. May help her hair to look really kind of a dark kind of raven black that does kind of shimmer blue in the light. But even if her hair does end up looking blue, then it's all good. She's a mermaid, she can have blue hair. This is the periwinkle, and I think I've kind of slipped into colouring hair the way that I normally colour hair. So yeah, I'll be picking out a few of the strand lines, shading those, making sure the highlights come in the places where I marked, where I marked they actually go. Maybe strengthening those with the white gel pen. Playing around with these pencils that I showed you I picked out until I've actually got something that I'm happy with. I want to leave some of the original colour coming through from our marker there. So it does seem to be the base in the image. And this kind of 30% cool grey, I think this one was, that seems to be more of a highlight than the actual cloud blue. It's all good. I brought in a little bit of the white there as well to try and get those highlights really shining out, and that seems to That seems to be actually working. I do want this mermaid's hair to be standing out from the sky. I'm not sure if we'll do that by being darker than it or lighter than it. At the moment it's looking as if we are going to be lighter than the sky, so bringing in the highlights is helping with that. And as usual, it's a case of just playing around with the colours until I have something going on that I think looks as if it could possibly be black. Let's just see what the actual white highlights would look like here. And these shouldn't pick up any colour from underneath because we have used a few layers of pencil there. So hopefully that will block the colour from shining through. I think that's something we can work with. Maybe we need a little bit more darker black, I'm thinking. And that darker ultramarine blue. There we go, yeah. I think we need to add in a few more darker colours if we want our hair to look as if it is black rather than grey or blue. We do have highlights though, especially where her hair bends over here to go down into her parting. In the middle there. So yeah, that kind of thing. I think we can make that work. In the original art, the mermaid's hair is a lot darker than the actual sky in the background, but we have gone pretty dark with our sky. I think we are standing out quite nicely from the actual sky though with this hair. I think it is working to stand out, so I'm going to keep on with these colours. I'm using the black for quite a lot of the heavy shadows, which will be more on this side of her face here because the light is coming from this direction, judging from the shadows on her face in the original art. I'm using the black mainly with the little touches of this ultramarine blue. And then bringing in the lighter colours, I think we had a cool grey, didn't we? And cloud blue. For the highlighted areas, I think will work quite well. And we do want to have strand lines showing through, so I'm trying not to blend super much. Still want the hair to look as if it's made up of lots of different strands of hair. This hair is not a solid kind of mass. Where there are strands blowing up over the top here, I want to try and bring a lot of shadow in around them. So around them will be the black and maybe the ultramarine blue. Bring in the ultramarine blue. Just go behind that kind of flyaway strand there. And for the actual strands that are coming up over the top of the rest of the hair, we'll be using the lighter colours. The white for the brightest highlights. And we'll be bringing in the white for these flyaway strands as well. Just to give some highlights to show they are coming up over the top of the other pieces of hair there. Thinking about it, it doesn't show much in the original art that I'm looking at unless my tablet is messing up the colours a little bit, but I think it might work quite well if we bring in this brighter blue as a sort of reflection into her hair, the blue that we have reflecting onto the sea. If we can make this show up, here we go. On this side where the lightning is striking, if we have this brighter blue coming through like it does on the sea, I think that might work quite well. There's half of her hair done there. And as I mentioned, I did bring in a brighter blue. This one is called Non-Photo Blue, PC919, which I did bring in for a few highlights here to show that the lightning is kind of blue because that's the colour that's reflecting onto the sea here. And I think that worked really well. I ended up not really using the cloud blue. I didn't really use that one very much. I thought that wasn't making very good highlights how I wanted them. So for the highlights, I was using the 30% cool grey. I used the black and the ultramarine for the shadows, and I've also used the periwinkle blue quite a lot, but yeah, I didn't use the cloud blue as much as I thought I probably would. I did also bring in the white quite a lot for highlights that weren't as harsh as the white gel pen, and I think we've got something working quite well there. It is a little bit more crazy on the highlights than actually is in the original line art, but yeah, I think I like it quite a lot. I do like that I've brought in that brighter blue that isn't in the original art as much, unless it's my tablet messing up the colours a little bit and showing them darker than they actually are. But yeah, I think we've got that working quite well, making her hair look as if it is black instead of blue or grey. I think that's working quite well, and it is standing out from the background of that stormy sky we've got going on, which is what I wanted to be happening. Also, it is looking now like our mermaid is the focus of the picture. With her hair done, it's starting to look that way now. So my not liking this wave here that I've said I'm not too happy with, not liking that is not so significant now anymore, I don't think. And as usual, I've done the right side of the page first when I should really have done the left side. So now my hand will be over what I have done. What you can do is bring in a spare piece of paper and put that down as a bit of a buffer between your hand and the colouring that you've done to stop it smudging so much. I'm going to go ahead and colour the other side of her hair now. And this side I won't be bringing in the bright blue so much, non-photo blue I think that one was called. I won't be bringing that one in as much because this side of her head is apparently in the shadow according to the shading we have on the face. I might bring in a few touches here along where that other stroke of lightning there is coming in, but I'm not going to go as crazy on it as I did on the other side. And I am putting in here a few extra strand lines. Now I've kind of figured out how I am going to do this hair. This side should not take as long in theory, because this is the first time I've really coloured hair with Prismacolor pencil, especially black hair, which is sort of difficult at the best of times. Again, we're going to probably have highlights here where her hair comes down into her parting. We're going to have highlights here where the hair comes up and above the rest of the hair. So I'll pop those in, but that will be mainly with the white and the cool grey. Hopefully we will have time to get on and just shade her skin at least a little bit before I have to stop filming today. I'm colouring with the Supertips. As the watercolour, it is a fairly quick way to cover large areas, so yeah, it's not taken half as long as a normal page, a Jasmine Becket-Griffith page, or a page from a normal kind of colouring book would take, because I have taken those Supertips and used them as watercolours as well. Anything that can colour large areas and not be too much effort is great for cutting down on your time that you spend colouring pictures. So we're going to bring in the highlights here close to where this lightning strike in the back there is. Anything that comes down over her face or anything that comes above any of the other hair, that will be having the highlights to it. I'm going to bring in that non-photo blue a very little bit here, just to show that lightning is, again, blue in the background, but we're not going to go as crazy with it as we did on the other side. I'm going to bring in the ultramarine, and not so much of the highlights on this side of her head, as we said, because we are further away from the light source. Judging by the shadows on the actual art that I'm looking at, it's not my decision where to put the light. I mean, technically I suppose her hair would be lit up from both sides, as we do have lightning on both sides, but this one is further away maybe, so not as many crazy highlights on this side. That was the ultramarine, this is the periwinkle. And as I explained, really just playing with those colours and layering them down, adding in strand lines, stuff like that, until I do get something that I am happy with. This side does have a lot more black in the actual image, but I'm kind of playing it by ear a little bit and working the way I usually work with hair, because completely copying someone else's kind of style never works for me. I always end up getting stressed about it and not enjoying myself and not getting a very good result. So as always, we're taking inspiration from the original art, we're not copying it. yeah, as I said, that is something that I've been doing lately that I don't usually do. It's teaching me a lot about color palettes and stuff like that, I think, because especially in this picture, I wouldn't have done anything kind of monochrome in this sort of style, I don't think. I have done monochrome pictures before, but yeah, not quite with this dramatic lighting or anything like that. So it's teaching me a bit about that as well, even though I'm not playing completely to the original artwork. And using this yellow as a skin tone wouldn't be something I'd normally do either. But yeah, looking at the original art, her skin is a very pale yellow as a base, or it seems to be. I think we're getting somewhere close here to be able to come in with the highlights. I probably haven't mentioned the colours that I have been using, but yeah, they are fairly different shades here. This is the periwinkle blue. I've been coming in with the 30% cool grey and the black and the white and the ultramarine as well for a few little touches in the shadows. I think we're looking something right. Maybe we need a little bit more of the black shading here. So we are on the shady side of the picture here. Yeah, that's slightly better. And if I do bring in a few less highlights on this side, I think that will be working, because we already have not quite as much of that non-photo blue, the brighter blue. Yeah, we do have the highlights where her hair here is curving around, so I'll pop a few of those in. Those are fairly strong highlights in the actual artwork there. Especially here on the strand, so it seems. And the strand does go out and around, so that would be highlighted. I like to highlight any strands that go over the face just to pick them out. We have highlights down here and along this kind of area, which is why I've brought in that the brighter blue just around this kind of area. And how I highlight, I do a line and then a couple of dots usually when I'm highlighting hair. Any places where I think the light would be actually shining off the hair, I just come in with my white pen like that. This is the ultramarine blue, just darkening in a few of these areas where we don't have the highlights so much. And there we go. I think I'll call that done on that side there. Maybe bring in a little bit of white there. Yeah, it's better after this strand that's passing over the top there. And there we go. I'm going to call that done, I think. So now we're going to move on to the kind of beads that are around her top there. And how those seem to be done. Let me see. There's a lot of black shading in on those. I'll just do those quickly, or try to. There are a lot of fiddly little bits of shading here. There do seem to be a lot of black kind of around the outsides of them. And then they're shaded with a kind of a greyish blue. So I'm going to stick with the periwinkle blue, I think. So we can shade with that. And maybe give a bit of a white highlight, because they do seem to be quite shiny. So that looks as if it will work. We'll possibly come in with the white gel pen for a few highlights for these as well. But basically I'm putting a kind of a shadow around on the opposite side to the light. So that will be on the left hand side, as we have our light technically coming from there. Or as I said a couple of times, according to the shading that we have on the original art. So this will be technically rinse and repeat for all these beads. So I think I'll go ahead and fill in all the beads. That will be with the black, the periwinkle blue and the white. And then I'll come in and add a few little white gel pen highlights onto these beads as well. Something along those lines. So I'm going to be colouring the rest of those beads, and then I'll catch up with you when I've done that, and then we'll be nearly done. We'll just have our skin left to do, which is another one of my favourite things to colour. So catch up with you in a second. I'm back again, and I have been through and I've coloured all those little kind of pebble stones or whatever these are here. I'm not sure if they're scales or pebbles or stones of some sort, but I've been and coloured them all anyway. Added in a few white highlights. Also not forgetting these ones on her tail that I nearly did forget there. So now it's time to go on and shade her skin, and I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to do this, so I have been putting it off till last. I think we're going to have to stick to shades of cool grey, maybe bringing in some blues. I'm not entirely sure how to do this as I've never coloured skin in this kind of light before. But for the darkest shadows down the sides of her body here, this one is the darkest cool grey, 90% cool grey. And I think that is what we'll need to fill in the darkest shadows down the side of her body. Not going super crazy. We basically want a thin line of shadow there down the side of her body, which comes up under her arm there as well. As long as we can get something that's working here, I think I'll be happy with it. It doesn't have to be completely the same as the original art. It just has to actually work. We'll give her a tummy button. And these will be blending out a little bit into each other. These Prismacolors, they blend super easily. I do love the Prismacolors. I'll add a little bit of shadow underneath her chin there, just to make sure her head is coming forward. I don't think we've got super dark shadows on her face. No, those are the darkest kind of shadows there. And I'm not sure how well this will work. I'm going to try and blend out into this blue-violet lake, which is PC1079. The number for the cool grey. The number for the cool grey, the darkest cool grey, that one is PC1067, if I didn't mention that. But I'm going to try and blend out into this purple, which seems to be what's happening on the original line art. Although, as I said, I'm not trying to follow that super well. I think it will work out as a pretty good colour for the shadows, because it's reminiscent of this kind of blue here, which seems to have a kind of purple tone to it. So yeah, I'm hoping that will work. And the shadows on her body seem to be more towards the bottom here, where she is going into the sea. We might need to narrow down this area of highlight here we've got going on her tummy. Might need to bring in a few more shadows down here, but yeah, I'm going to carry on blending that cool grey into this purple and seeing how that works. And then maybe move into the cool greys. Maybe that cloud blue could come in to blend the blue grey we have here into the yellow cream of her skin. I don't know. Playing it by ear as usual. So that is the Violet Lake, I think that one was called. We'll blend out under her chin there as well into that kind of violet colour, just to keep the shadows kind of consistent. And I'm going to try moving into the 50% cool grey. I'm not totally experienced with Prismacolor, so I'm hoping these blend into each other well. They do seem to be blending into each other quite well. Let's try bringing in that cloud blue. The cloud blue that I couldn't get working for her hair very well might work here quite nicely to blend out that cool grey. And start coming up into the light areas there. We also have a cream that we can use here. And that is a bit more yellow, a bit of a darker yellow than we've actually got going on there. Let's try blending that with the yellow. Is that working? I'm not entirely sure. We also have a white we can pick up a few highlights with. We do have a highlight there. Maybe doesn't come that far up onto her shoulder, but I think we've got a pretty good blend going on there for our shadow. So that might be something that I carry on with there, I think. It's looking like this blue, this cloud blue, comes in a little bit further up. So for the shadows, we seem to be working with the 90% cool grey for the very dark areas, moving into the blue-violet lake, a PC1079. Then we have the 50% cool grey, PC1063, We have the cloud blue PC1023, and then we have the cream. And that seems to be working okay down here anyway. I think we'll be able to work with that for the dark areas of her skin down here. It's not quite the same as we do have going on the original artwork, but it is somewhat similar, I think, so I'm going to go with it for my little mermaid anyway. We do need some more shading up there, but I'll just get these arms done first. Moving into the cloud blue here, we do have the blue coming up quite a way on this side of her body. I'm sure there's a few of you shouting at me, shouting at the video at the moment, saying that's not how you use Prismacolors, but I'm still getting used to them, to be perfectly honest, especially for large areas like this. They are fairly new pencils to me. I've had a little set for a while, plus also I'm trying to copy somebody else's artwork, which is not something that really comes easily to me, to be honest. I usually get bogged down in details, getting things perfectly right, which, yeah, doesn't work too well for me. But I will give this a good go. This is a kind of skin colour I've never really attempted before, so this is all kind of new to me. I think it's kind of working. I've made that highlight there a little bit kind of smaller. It does come down a lot there, I think. Okay, let's try blending with the white. That is actually working out better than I thought it would, to be honest. We'll come in with a few white highlights, customary white highlights, especially where our pens have gone over the line art. Oh, could we bring in that photo blue, or non-photo blue as it's called? Maybe have a little bit of that shining on the shoulder there, to show that the light is blue on this side. We might have a tiny little bit of that. Yeah, I quite like how that's working. Okay, yeah, we'll work with that. Let's blend that into the cloud blue. We seem to have a lot more shadow up here on the top part of her body, so we'll be working with that 50% cool grey and the cloud blue. That's working. I'll add some highlights to the top of her shoulder there. So this is a 50% cool grey, and I'm trying to add shadows in the same kind of shape as they are in the original artwork. But as long as it's vaguely similar, I'm going to be happy, I think. And these beads or scales, pebbles, whatever they are, seem to have a little bit of shading underneath them. So we'll add that in to make them look as if they are a little bit 3D here. I'm just building up these shadows on her skin a little bit as well. Trying to smooth it out more than anything. And Prismacolors are very smudgy. That is one drawback to them. So I really should stop the habit of sweeping my hand across to get rid of any pencil shavings or eraser shavings. There we go, that's working pretty well, I think. As much as I do love colouring faces, I really have not been looking forward to trying to get this to work with this colour scheme of skin that is going on here. This kind of cream colour with the cool grey. It's not really a set of colours that I would normally use to colour skin at all. I'll try to follow the pattern of shading that is on the original artwork, but I'll probably start colouring things my own way in a little while anyway. We don't have super strong shadows on her face. We do have a little bit of pink coming into her cheeks. She does have blushy cheeks. That will be something I can come in and do. So I'm going to try and blend out this cool grey. That was the 30% cool grey that I went in with first there. I'm just trying to blend that out with the cloud blue, sticking with the same kind of colours that we had going on with her body. And we'll bring in some pink for her lips and her cheeks in a second, once we've got something working with her face. It is a little bit strange. This one doesn't have Jasmine Becket-Griffith's normal kind of bandit mask shading for the eyes. It has more of a realistic kind of shading for the shading around the eyes here. So I'm trying to follow what is actually on the original art. Might need to grab a pink in a second. Coming down the side of her face, we do have a tiny little bit of a suggestion of the shading here. The shading that is normally in Jasmine's pictures, but a lot more subtle. Not sure I'm going to be able to blend that out subtly enough, but we will give it a little bit of a go. We definitely do have shadow under her nose. Foreheads are technically sort of rounded, sort of dome shaped, but you don't want the highlights and the shading to be super obvious. Although sometimes it is kind of hard to get something there that's subtle enough. Blending again with the white. Yeah, the skin on her face is fairly pale. And a very subtle little bit of shading around the nose there. I think with the blue we do have a very slight suggestion of a kind of nose shape there. So we'll try and pop that in as well. Yeah, that's not looking too bad. That's looking a lot better than I thought it would, considering that this skin tone for me is a pretty odd one that I've never really used before. Her eyebrows could do with a little bit of shading, couldn't they? Try to blend out this grey into the cream a little bit and then bring in some pink. We do need the pink for her lips anyways. So let's have a look at some pinks. On her cheeks we seem to have a pretty pale pink. Let's try this pink rose. It's a very subtle kind of hint of pink coming up the side of her face there. That's sort of what we have in the original artwork on the sides of her face here. Very kind of subtle hint of the blushy cheeks. And I'm going to add this pink to her, the inner eyelids here as well, and then little tear ducts. That one is Pink Rose PC 1018. And for her lips, it's more of a, let's see, this rosy beige might be along the right lines. More of a kind of a grey pink. So rosy beige is PC 1019. Touch of a pink rose on her lips to blend out that rosy beige, was that one called? And I think we might need some more darker shading there. This is mahogany red, PC 1029. Try and stay with the kind of desaturated feeling that we have with most of the colours, as it is a very stormy sky. Everything is dark. That's not looking too bad. If I add a few white highlights to that, I think we could be in business. I'll pop this into her little tear ducts as well. Shade her eyelids a little bit. Yep, that's looking good. Okay, we had a little bit of a mishap there where we had a bit of pencil dust on the paper, and as I brushed it away it left some marks going on this lady's face, so I've given her some beauty marks. I did that by using the periwinkle blue, adding in a dot of the periwinkle, and then coming right into the very centre with a very tiny dot of the ultramarine, and then blending the whole out with the white to give her some beauty marks on her face. And I wasn't quite sure which colour pink I was using, so I've added a little bit more blushy cheeks with this blush pink, PC928. I'm not sure which one I was using. I didn't leave it out on my desk for once. Usually I do. So this is a slightly different colour pink, but I've added a little bit extra blushy cheeks with that. Just trying to fix my little mistake we had happening there. And this side of her face would be the darkest side anyway, so we can come in and blend that out into the 30% cool grey. We'll add in the shadow along the edge of a jawline that I like to do. It could actually give us some more beauty marks. I do love to add little beauty marks onto my ladies. Sometimes it is just to disguise little mishaps, or if blending goes a little bit wrong, but yeah, I do love to put them in anyway. And just to finish her off, we'll add in her eyes. This is the 30% cool grey. It's coming in for a shadow under her eyelid there. A bit of shading on that blue. We'll use the periwinkle, seeing as that one is actually out and we've been using it. We'll shade her eyes with that. Maybe put a touch of that non-photo blue. We'll bring a touch of that in. And come in with a few highlights on her face. Especially on her lips, we do have a few in the middle here. We have a whole line across the bottom of her lips there. And as usual, I like to put in my big highlight, my little highlight in the eyes. Shine lines. We have a highlight on her nose. I need to bring my shading in a little bit further on that nose, I think. That's better. Just coming in with a cool grey and adding in a little bit more shading there, just so her nose isn't so wide. There we go. I'll just add a little extra bit of dark. This is the darkest grey, 90% grey there, to those beauty marks, and yeah, make those stand out. Yeah, a couple of extra grey ones, maybe. Yes. That is awesome. Noses are difficult. I still struggle with noses, even though I've coloured so many faces. I couldn't even begin to count them at the moment. I still struggle with colouring noses. It can be very difficult. I think I'm probably going to call the actual colouring there, but I do want to go around the outside edge here with some washi tape to just finish up as a final touch. I think this washi tape here is kind of a stormy blue, my glittery kind of washi tape. I think that one will give us a nice frame for our lady here. That's made a really good frame. I think that colour really matches in with the colour palette we've got going on with that picture. The paper has wrinkled a little bit here because of the water we used with the super tips, but I'm going to call it there, I think, and I'll zoom us out so we can see the whole picture. So there we are with the finished picture, and yeah, I'm really pleased with the end result. I didn't think it would turn out that good, to be perfectly honest, trying to copy Jasmine's original art by using super tips, but yeah, it seems to have worked pretty well. I do love the monochrome blue colour palette. I think that's worked really well, bringing in a few little bits of greys here in the sea as well, and then her skin being the creamy colour, the yellow, really standing out from the blues there. I do love all the watercolory style effects we've had with these super tips blending out into each other here. They do work super, super well on this paper. I like that the mermaid is more solid with the marker and the pencil as compared to the more watercolory background. I also think that's worked really well. I do love her cute little beauty marks, which were originally unplanned, but they do seem to suit her really well, I think, make her look more kind of younger, really, and more kind of cheeky, I think, and not quite so brooding as the original art. So there's a very broody kind of mermaid going on there in the original art, but yeah, I think she's worked out super well. The colours on the mermaid are pretty pale with that primrose yellow and some pale blues and greys going on there, but hopefully that is showing up on camera and showing how well that she does stand out from that stormy background. So that's another one coloured this month for my theme of storms, so I'm quite pleased about that as well. And yeah, I do love Jasmine Becket-Griffith, so that's always a bonus. Hopefully that's been fun for you guys as I puzzle my way through making this picture work today. If you have enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing. Take care everyone, and I'll see you in future videos. Bye!